Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to share a little bit about grain boundary segregation in aluminum. Aluminum is a material that has been increasingly replacing steel in many applications because of its superior strength to weight ratio. As such, many researchers have spent time trying to figure out how to improve the material properties of aluminum, especially its strength, without negatively impacting its ductility and toughness. One way this is possible is through grain boundary segregation. And today I'm going to share a little bit about the effects grain boundary segregation has on the microstructure of a material, how it can be used to stabilize materials with small grains on the order of nanometers, and how it affects corrosion rates of materials. Now, as you probably already know, grain boundaries in materials occur when two grains in a material are misaligned, and it leads to a lot of unique sites being created at a grain boundary that have different bond lengths than the rest of the material. As such, some solute elements segregate towards the grain boundary because is an energetically favorable state for them. Scientists have recently used computer programming to model this behavior by creating grain boundaries and substituting atoms in at certain sites along that grain boundary to determine how it affects different materials. And researchers have found that based on the misalignment or the character of the grain boundary itself, as well as the element that is substituted into the grain boundary, there can be a wide range of effects on material properties. Some materials, such as zinc and magnesium, when alloyed into aluminum, actually increase the brittleness of the grain boundary, whereas others, such as rare earth metals, have been found to increase its cohesion. These different effects can be leveraged in many different ways. One way in which these unique sites can be used is in creating materials with small grain sizes. Now, decreasing a material's grain size is a great way to increase its strength without negatively impacting its ductility or its toughness. However, when these materials are exposed to high temperatures, often they experience grain growth. Grain boundary segregation can actually be used to slow down grain growth. And this can occur in many different ways. Recent studies have found that alloying aluminum with rare earth metals, such as yttrium, for example, cause grain growth to be inhibited. And not only this, it allows the material to be stable and not increase in grain size when exposed to higher temperatures. Furthermore, other practices such as plastic deformation by the use of high pressure torsion have also been found to increase or to decrease grain boundary size and increase grain boundary segregation, which allows the grains to which causes the grains to expand less as temperatures increase. Materials that have been created through these methods have been found to withstand temperatures of up to 90% of their melting temperature without losing significant amounts of, without increasing significantly in grain size, which allows them to have a much higher toughness than other materials that don't utilize grain boundary segregation. However, grain boundary segregation doesn't come without negative effects. And one thing that happens often is grain boundary segregation leaves a material susceptible to intergranular corrosion, which can cause stress corrosion cracking in the material. And now recent research has tried to figure out how to mitigate the effects of this. And one thing that actually can be helpful is alloying certain elements such as copper or those rare earth metals that cause greater grain boundary cohesion. Some of these materials have been found to reduce the rate of intergranular corrosion. Not only this, but other materials can actually be, certain materials can actually be engineered such that they have different grain boundaries, such as low angle grain boundaries that are resistant to corrosion, more so than high angle grain boundaries. So by processing the material differently, these corrosion effects can be mitigated. Or the corrosion effects can be leveraged to make a stronger sacrificial anode out of the aluminum. In conclusion, the grain boundary segregation has many effects on a material. And by figuring out how to model it more accurately using computer programming, it opens the doors for materials to have much smaller grain sizes, has been found, to increase their strength significantly, as well as to protect these materials against corrosion. Thank you for listening.